again to the Public Policy Foundation, certainly my thanks for putting this together. That is a powerful pamphlet that you have before you, and I hope not only will you take it and absorb it, but that you will share it with people that you, in your circle of influence, and particularly our friends in the media who have the ability to really exponentially expand that knowledge. I think it's important for people in this state to understand why our policies are working. And Dennis Cuneo, who is here today, and Dennis is kind of out, I refer to you as being out in the private sector now. He worked very closely with us as we were bringing Toyota here, Talmadge, back in the early 2000s. And after you setting two guys there that are really a couple of the brain childs, if you will, of San Antonio and Bexar County economic development in the early part of the 2000s, and to bring that great company into to Texas, and I mean, that's a story all of its own about how we developed our economic development tools came out of the lack of having those available when we were trying to recruit Toyota, and by a lot of hard work and some innovative moving things around in the state, we were able to not only get their attention, because we weren't even on their radar screen initially, but to not only get on their radar screen, to lure them here, to have that company now that is employing a substantial number of Texans. And Dennis just leaned over and whispered to me as I came in, is it okay to say that? I don't think that's a secret, so if it is, it's fixing not be. No, I wouldn't do that to you. But as you all know, the Tundra, that great full-size pickup truck, has been made out there for the last years. And then last year, the Tacoma, which is the smaller pickup line, shut down in California and moved that line to Texas to complement the full-size line here. And Dennis just shared with me that the lines out at Toyota are working overtime today. That's a great piece of news. But anyway, again, and I want to say thanks to AT&T and obviously Texas One, the National Federation of Independent Business. Will, thank you for what you're doing. Texans for Taxpayer Relief, all sponsors of today's event. And represented in that bunch, you essentially have the representation of very key elements of our state's economy, and one of the reasons we are so competitive. Will and his members, those small businessmen and women, are the real core. They're the foundation of the Texas economy, and it's listening to them. I think is one of the most important things that those of us in elected office do from the standpoint of keeping this competitiveness going, because those are the individuals. They're somewhat like the parrot, or excuse me, that small bird, the parakeet in the cave, that first indication if something is going wrong. They are there. They see it. They feel it. So listening to our small businesses and then responding appropriately is one of the things I think very important. Just like last session of the legislature, we listened and we raised that tax level, and 40,000 small businesses were exempt from paying that business tax. And that's the important part of how our process works. It's kind of a juxtaposition, I think, between how Texas and Washington works. They don't listen. So, but anyway, think about it. You've got these groups represented here. You've got the Public Policy Foundation, Reagan, that helps us wrangle out all the details of a very fiscally disciplined set of public policies. I mean, they're a great tool for the legislature and for agencies, for that matter, to tap into, to use their expertise. You got the Texans for Taxpayer Relief, who are advocating for low taxes, and you have Dr. Weingarten, who, I think explains very clearly how important having that low tax burden is, and giving the clear picture to people about how burdensome those taxes become. I mean, when people ask, oh gosh, how are you going to deal with this legislative session? Talmadge, I tell them, I said, go visit with Talmadge Heflin. He can tell you how you deal with it. We've done that before. And the worst time, the absolute worst time to raise taxes on the job creators in your society is when there's a recession going on. That's the time you need to be trying to lighten the load on them, give them some hope, give them some help, give them some opportunity. And then, Nick, I want to thank you for being here, of course, and representing Texas One. That's our, recruiting new jobs to Texas is, I think, one of our most important functions that we have as a state. And Texas One has been a very, very not only influential but very effective tool, and as well as NFIB. So anyway, look, that's the recipe for success, and I think what we're doing, there is a reason we are repeatedly beating these other states when it comes to jobs and investment, and that Texas, California. Side by side is a great example of it. The principles that these groups represent help answer some very key questions in the competition that go on between the states. Why does Texas lead the nation in job creation, and how has it done so for the past decade? I mean, for the last 10 years, Texas has led the nation in job creation. How does Texas export more than any other state? I think we're either on our 8th or 9th year as the #1 exporting state in the nation. How do we play host to more Fortune 1000 companies than any other state? Why did 153 California businesses move to Texas last year? I mean, actually, it was only between January and August of this year. There's still 25% or more of the year left, so it'll be more than 153 businesses. Why has Texas been such a success at economic development, and Washington failed so badly? And as I see it, the disconnect between Texas and Washington is not just merely that physical distance between the two places, but it's also the difference between two markedly different cultures and opposing views on the role of government. Like you, I prefer my government smaller and less intrusive. Like so many of my fellow Texans, I have been appalled at the unchecked expansion of the federal government and its boldness when it comes to spending, intruding into the lives of its citizens and accumulating debt at an unprecedented rate. Somehow, somewhere, folks in Washington, D.C. decided that they should be the people who are the final arbiter of all things critical, and anything that people need to be making decisions about, they decided they needed to be the final arbiter of that. And the impact of that approach has not been, they thought we were going into a period of nirvana. I mean, I swear it's the most interesting thing, hope and change, and these are the policies, I mean, you would have, it was almost a fairy tale that was being painted in the minds of Americans in the 2008 campaign, and then through the early part of 2009. And what happened was very much different from that. I would suggest a nightmare scenario is more appropriate. That the uncertainty that has been cast upon the minds and the souls of the people of this country has been the byproduct. You know, I'm not sure they had an understanding of the concept of free market capitalism to begin with. I'm not sure these people actually understand how it works. I know they don't respect it. Our leaders in Washington seem to have lost touch with the fact that people who create jobs are actually human beings. And they have hopes, they have dreams, and those are balanced with concerns and fears. Employers considering expanding their facilities or their employee base, they want to know the government isn't going to jerk the rug out from under them halfway through the process with some, surprise changes in the regulations. Here in Texas, we have made our economy more competitive by following 4 simple rules. You all have heard this before, but it's worth repeating. There really is not deep rocket science to the principles of governing. You don't have to be a PhD from Harvard to understand the principles of governing. You got to have some courageous men and women like Talmadge Heflin to implement those principles. You have to have a tax policy and a regulatory policy that are fair and predictable. If Caterpillar thought for a moment that halfway through that building process that they're going through in Seguin and now Victoria, that this state was going to change the regulatory rules on them halfway through the spending of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of capital, they would never have stepped foot in the state. If Toyota thought for a moment that we were going to change the tax structure, or the third principle of governing, which is to have a legal system that does not allow for oversuing, and the tort reform that we passed in 2003, Mr. Chairman, is paying huge dividends to this state. If you thought for a moment that somehow or another we're going to be sued frequently in the state of Texas, you would not have come here. Had Medtronics, that great medical device company that headquartered in California, that company that made the artificial pancreas, if they thought for a moment they were going to move here and find the personal injury trial lawyers running amok and suing them every time they turned around, they would not have chosen to come to the state of Texas. They knew that we had put protections against that type of frenzied, frivolous lawsuits. And they also knew something else, which is the fourth principle of governing, that in Texas, they have funded appropriately accountable public schools.